International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have been founded, just like the United Nations after World War II. Why? Mainly because after the war, everyone wanted peace. However, peace on an empty stomach is hard to maintain. So these two institutions were meant to help the economic stability of the world. Both of them are basically banks, but instead of being started by individuals like regular banks, they've been started by countries. Most of the world's countries are members of the two institutions, but of course, the richest countries are those who handled most of the financing, and ultimately, those who have the greatest influence. The IMF and the World Bank were designed to complement each other. The IMF's main goal is helping countries which are currently in trouble and who cannot get money by other means. Perhaps their economy collapsed, perhaps their currency is in danger. The IMF, in these cases, is kind of like a lender of last resort, who you go to when nobody else is willing to give you money. The World Bank, in comparison, has a more long-term approach. Its main goals revolve around the eradication of poverty, and it funds specific projects which help them reach these goals, especially in poor countries. Unfortunately, the reputation of these institutions has been dwindling, mainly due to practices such as lending to corrupt governments, or even dictators, and imposing ineffective austerity measures to get their money back. If run properly, however, they definitely could help make the world a better place.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I hope you had that. You've seen that short video, which is trying to explain what the World Bank is. So the World Bank as an institution, I mean, what the IMF is. I mean, the IMF as an institution is an institution which is responsible for macroeconomic stability, like what we have said, and it lends to nations. It is a group. It is an institution that was started by a group of countries that came together after World War II. As you rightly know, that the institutions which were formed after World War II, when you're talking about the World Bank, IMF, and the United Nations, Africa was not on the table because during that period, the global South, majority of the world was under colonialism, the brutal colonialism of the West. So majority of them, they were not there. So even when you see today that the IMF, to a certain level, like the gentleman rightly mentioned in the video, that to a certain extent, people have come to hate the institutions. Why? Because they were transformed into institutions of vehicles for colonialism instead of helping the world, as we are going to continue to see, in our presentation. And so the United States, as you can see, Japan, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, and these are the leading countries who are putting money in there, and China, who has arrived on the scene more recently because of its economic growth. So what happens there is that countries have votes. Like you can see, the United States is the one with the biggest number of votes. Even though there is 100% votes, the United States, with 5% of the global population, has more than 16.5% of the votes. So this is the influence. So this means that the United States has oversized influence in this particular institution, together with its colonial allies. And people talk about Japan. I think the other thing which people don't know about Japan is that Japan also is a colonial country. It went and colonized China. That is why you see that China and Japan, they have that friction even up to now. They have that unfinished business. And that is why Japan fears China very much, because it fears that retaliation, that China in one way or the other may come and retaliate against Japan because of what Japan went and did to China, to the extent that even it helped to separate off Taiwan from China. It went and colonized and killed a lot of people. So Japan also has a big influence in the World Bank. So the more powerful you are economically, is the more influence you have at the IMF. And it is unfortunate even that countries like India, for example, which you are seeing, India also has, considerable influence because it has about 2.64% vote share, at the IMF India. And yet, the aggregated economy of the African continent right now is bigger than that of India. India is around 3.1, I think it is around 3.17 trillion, and Africa is up to 3.4 to 3.5 trillion. So Africa also could have been at this table, to make major decisions and contributions. You can see Brazil is there. You can see Russia is there. Small countries like Italy, they are there. Even they have more say than how you can see what Africa is contributing. So Africa has been left as a beggar in this institution because we have not yet achieved the power, the level of power that Nkrumah envisioned for us, or what our forefathers envisioned for us and said, let us unify so that we can aggregate our economies. And when we aggregate our economies, we'll get even respect, from all these institutions, World Bank, IMF, UN. We'll get respect from them. But because we have still a group of people who don't understand the power of unity, the advantages of coming together as Africans, then that is why Africa has continued to be in the position where it is, that it is being bullied, it is being occupied with military bases, with the force. They occupy the continent even without our knowledge. But I don't want to go very much deep into that. So what we are saying is that the IMF, unlike the World Bank, which sponsors various projects. For example, you can see that if you go to various African countries, you will see that there's a road, there's a hospital, and you will see it is written the World Bank, sponsored by the World Bank, or funded by World Bank. The IMF doesn't do that. So while the World Bank is on the microeconomic level within countries, the IMF is on the level of the national level. It doesn't deal with internal issues, but it rather deals with the whole economy. They come to your country when you have failed. Understand that the moment you see IMF has come to you, most of the times, actually, it is our leaders who go to them that they want help. The moment you see them, it means that they don't have anywhere else to borrow, because there's a couple of spaces where to borrow money from. They borrow money on the international market from private investors. They can borrow money from nations, individual nations. But when you see that the economy is not doing well, and they have failed to go to the international market to borrow money, and they can't borrow money from states, then the IMF comes in. The IMF is the last resort lender. And the reason why it has been twisting the arm of the global south, and especially African countries which are poor, and taking our resources, they come to your country and say, what do you have as resources? They connive up, okay? They connive up with other, companies, major Western corporations, because the West is the one which is leading in putting money in this institution. So they send their corporations to extract mineral resources, because you have failed as a leader to take care of your own people, and you have failed to capitalize on these resources. On one side, that is on one side. On the other side also, sometimes they use force. They can come, if you have a lot of resources and you were planning for them very well, they can come and talk to you. If they talk to you and you refuse, then they overthrow you and put someone they will be able to deal with. So that is the second scenario. And they work together, of course, with the colonialist power. So from a Pan-African perspective, you can say that the IMF actually is a colonial institution, which is there to continue the process of colonization from direct colonization. This is indirect colonization, which Nkrumah called neo-colonialism. So it is a continuation of the old colonialism, which Britain used to use a lot of force and come and take the resources by force through colonization, direct colonization. Now the United States and its allies, now they gang up and put money into this institution, and then they come and colonize indirectly. So this is what the IMF is about from the studies that we have seen. And so you see that being done, from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, when the African countries had just gotten independence. And so they came in to claim that they are giving advice to the African people on what to do with their economies. So briefly, that is what the IMF is about.